What's up, airplane collectors? Welcome to Model Airplane Review. It's your host Ray. In today's video, I'll be reviewing the Phoenix Model 1-400 scale Icelandair cargo Boeing 767-300 freighter version. I have no idea what BCF stands for, so I'm just going to call it the freighter. This model was released in February of 2023, if my memory serves correctly. And in today's video, I'll be talking about the box, then the model itself, and at the end of the video, I will give my personal opinion about what I think of the model and whether or not I recommend it to other collectors. That being said, let's get this review started. Starting off with the box is a standard issue 1-400 scale model airplane box at 15 centimeters lengthwise and height-wise and 4 centimeters wide. I'll show you around the box now. So here's the front, bottom, right side, top, left side, and the back side. Once you open up the box, the model is fully assembled, painted, and ready to go. Before I begin my review, I'm going to give a quick 360 of the model so you can get a good look at its features. The model is moderately sized at 14 centimeters for the fuselage length, 12 centimeters for the wingspan including the winglets, and 4 centimeters tall. Accurate to 1-400 scale, decently sized, and this model is also pretty heavy because it is made primarily out of die-cast metal. Starting up at the front of the aircraft, let's talk about the nose. The nose shape of this aircraft looks pretty good. However, the cockpit window printing makes it look a little bit iffy. In my opinion, the cockpit windows are a little bit low. I'm not a huge expert on the 767 anatomy, so I wouldn't know for sure. But something about the cockpit window printing and or the nose shape looks a little bit off. And that's really the only complaint I have up here. The shape of the nose itself seems fine, and printed detail seems pretty solid. You can see the large Icelandair title. Something that I also noticed was the passenger windows. Those are printed as well, which is a very nice touch. And one thing that the camera cannot see is an issue with the finish on the model. There's a little bit of an inconsistency with the polish at the front section of the plane, on the left here at least. And the camera can't see it, but I definitely can, so it's just one of those things that you're going to have to take my word for it on that. Moving down the fuselage, we can see the giant Icelandair title with the classic Euro white format. Looks pretty solid. The lettering seems pretty thick in terms of the amount of layering that was used to apply the logos there, so it kind of does go over the printed details of the cockpit windows and all that good stuff, but it still seems pretty good nonetheless. Back here, everything seems okay. The pink stripe here is, or whatever color you'd like to call it, I think it's magenta. This magenta, pink, purple, whatever you want to call it, the stripe here, it has a very defined line where the blue, the blue was applied and then the pink was applied over it. So this is visible throughout the entire model, and it's a bit less visible on the right side of the fuselage, but on the bottom of the fuselage, that is where it's visible the most, so I will point that out later. Here's the vertical stabilizer, and yes, I've adjusted the exposure a bit to show the colors a bit more. Vertical stabilizer looks fine, details look good, paint application looks good. It's kind of hard to see the molded detail for the rudder, but it is there, so I can't complain too much. Everything up here looks pretty solid. Here is the section of the fuselage I was telling you about with the paint line. You can see it here, but it's not in the middle of the pink as it was on the other side, so it's a bit harder to notice, but it's still present. I'll show the right side of the fuselage now. I won't provide really any commentary since it's virtually identical to the left side, and everything that can be said about the left side of the fuselage can also be said about the right side of the fuselage. Moving on to the wing. The wings look pretty solid in terms of their detail and their shape. There is a nice combination of printed, painted, and molded detail on here, although the molded detail is a little bit harder to see due to the paint filling in most of the areas where the molded detail is present, but you can see the control surfaces here are molded, just a little bit harder to recognize. Yeah, pretty solid up here, can't complain too much. Bottom of the wing doesn't have any printed detail minus the logo the aircraft's registration right here. As for the winglets look pretty solid. Their shape is very nice. Overall printing and paint application is good, except for here on the outside of the left winglet. You can see there is a significantly thicker section of paint right here, And while it's hard to notice, something definitely did happen there. I'm not sure what it is, but it looks as though almost someone tried to patch up some issue here, and it really doesn't fit uniformly with the rest of the surface. And on the leading edge of that winglet, you can also see a very small blue scratch on the metallic paint there. Aside from that, everything looks pretty good, and the right winglet looks a lot better with no issues on the right winglet that I can identify. So winglets were questionable on the left side, but the right side is pretty good. There we go. I was trying to show you, but the camera wouldn't focus. Here's the rear section of the aircraft. Here we can see the horizontal stabilizers. These are pretty nicely detailed. You can see a bit of printed detail on there, painted and molded detail as well. Pretty solid, can't complain. Everything back here looks pretty smooth. Here's what the underside looks like. Oh, and here's what I was talking about with the pink line. You can see where the definition of where the two halves come together. It's very well defined, so that's something, while it's on the bottom of the aircraft, it's still an issue that I don't see in other aircraft manufacturers, so it is kind of irritating to me. Aside from that, everything back here looks pretty good. Here's the APU. APU looks very nicely detailed with a hole for the APU exhaust. Very nice to see. The engines on this model are also pretty nice. You can see there's a decent amount of printed detail on them, and the pylons seem pretty good as well. The left engine is pretty solid, however the right engine I do have something to complain about. Here's what the fan blades look like. The fan blades look pretty decent, painted a very dark metallic gray, which is nice. The right engine is also pretty good in terms of detail. However, you can see it is tilted upward. It's suffering from Gemini jet syndrome. The engine is bent upwards slightly, and it's very hard to notice, especially while the model is on the ground, but it is an issue. And you can also see that the exhaust nozzle is distinctly separated from the pylon, which is not an issue on the other side. So that is a rather unfortunate thing to see. And on the multiple examples that I was able to see at the store where I bought this at, there was multiple marks and fingerprints on the insides of the engines too. This one didn't have any though. This model does have aerial features in the form of antennas. There are two large antennas and one small antenna on the top of the aircraft. Two large, one here, and a small one right at the base of the vertical stabilizer. These look pretty good. They're pretty small, but they're fit securely to the model. At the bottom of the aircraft, there is one singular antenna right here. Right from here, I'm going to move on to the landing gear and talking about the rest of the bottom of the aircraft. The bottom of the aircraft looks nicely detailed with the Phoenix logo right here. I did not know their logo looks like that. And the landing gear is painted the metallic silver of the Phoenix models, which looks pretty good. The wheels roll very smoothly. They're made out of rubber, sorry about that. And yeah, they're pretty nicely detailed, so no complaints on the landing gear. They're pretty solid. I did see on a few examples that the nose gear was bent in several different ways, and on this one, it was actually bent forwards towards the front of the aircraft. However, I was very easily able to fix that by pushing it with my finger lightly and being patient. So quality control with the nose gear in terms of its shape and mounting is a bit questionable, but it is fixable for the most part. Here's a view at the front of the aircraft. Here we can see wing flex, gear balance, and cockpit window printing. Oh my god, wow. Everything looks pretty good. Wing flex seems proportional, gear balance seems to be mostly balanced, and cockpit window printing seems symmetrical. And you can even see the antennas line right up with the vertical stabilizer. Holy cow, I have not seen this on a 1/400 scale model in a very long time. Very good job on Phoenix's part for doing this right. And that is the end of my review. Now time for my personal opinion recommendation. This model is alright. It's pretty good. As I've said in this video and in my other videos with Phoenix models, and as I've been told by my subscribers as well, sometimes Phoenix does have quality control issues, and this model was no exception to that. But they're relatively minor, and some of them, for the most part, are forgivable. So yes, if you're willing to put up with some of the quality control things, get this model. That's my recommendation. Go for it. It's a beautiful looking aircraft in my opinion, even though it does follow the Euro white livery. It's something about it's still pretty nice, probably because my favorite color is blue, so I'm a bit biased on that. But yeah, it's pretty solid, and with that cockpit window printing, the symmetry of the wing flex, the wings, and the gear balance, that really caught me off guard because it's rare for a 1/400 scale model to have that. So that shows good assembly quality. In terms of final construction and fine detailing, that could use some work, but assembly is pretty solid on this model. Well, that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more model airplane content, and I hope to see you in my next video. Take care of yourselves. See you later.